Got some exclusive new details right now on the temporary foreign workers file. I've got them in my hand. Power and Politics has obtained briefing notes for the Human Resources Minister, Diane Finley. Now, these documents, which we obtained through the Access to Information, show that Minister Finley was warned a year ago about abuses in the temporary foreign workers program. The briefing note from last May highlights how employers were hiring temporary foreign workers in the same occupation and in the same location as Canadians looking for jobs and collecting employment insurance, EI. Let me show you this memo. The memo is from the Deputy Minister, Ron Parker, and he warned that, quote, in January of 2012, Albertan employers received positive confirmation for 1,261 temporary foreign worker positions for food counter attendants. At the same time, nearly 350 people made a claim for EI who had cited significant experience in the same occupation in the province. The memo goes on to say that in the very same month, quote, in Ontario, 1,500 temporary foreign worker permits were granted for general farm workers, while 2,200 farm workers were claiming EI. Meantime, in the province of Prince Edward Island, 60 temporary foreign worker permits were granted for fish plant workers, but 294 fish plant workers were claiming EI. Why did the government not bring in changes to the temporary foreign workers program when they were warned about this a year ago? The government contacted us, and what they said to us is there's nothing new in these documents, according to the communications director for Minister Finley. All of this is a typical briefing note. There's nothing new. But questions remain. How did the government respond to this? How fast did they act? And how many more situations of abuse are there across the country? Let's bring in some MPs now to get some reaction to these documents we've obtained in the foyer of the House of Commons. The Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Human Resources, Kelly Leitch, is here. The NDP's immigration critic, Jeannie Sims, is here. And the Liberal Human Resources critic, Roger Cuzner, is here. Kelly Leitch, why were these employers granted permission to hire temporary foreign workers when clearly the minister was warned a year ago in the same province, in the same profession, people on EI were looking for work?
Well, Evan, as we've outlined several times, we're about making sure that Canadians can be connected to available jobs. And when those individuals are not available, to make sure that a firm can prosper, the temporary foreign worker program is available to them. So does everything work perfectly? No, it doesn't. And that's why in Budget 2012, we actually announced focuses to make sure that we could reform to better link the temporary foreign worker program with employment insurance. And that's why, again, in 2013, we took action to make sure we dealt with the temporary foreign worker program. So hand in glove, well prior to this memo, the government had taken action, highlighted this concern, and started to address it. So we've continued to move forward to make sure that Canadians have options and make sure that Canadians are linked to jobs.
All right. You know, as I see it, Kelly Leitch, we got changes to the EI, or the temporary foreign workers program, last week, but the ministers warned on May 29th of last year about these abuses, essentially. So I guess my question is, let's start specifically. Did the minister investigate the situations with the fish plant workers? Did they, the food counter workers? Did you investigate these situations? And if so, exactly what was done about it?
Well, Evan, it's pretty evident that in the Budget 2012, it was actually March the 29th, which is actually before that document that you're referring to in May of 2012. So we moved forward well before that, concerned about making sure that Canadians, through employment insurance, were better linked to Canadian jobs, putting forward reforms that we felt, and I think the Canadian public agrees with, that we want to make sure that Canadian jobs are available to Canadians first. And moving forward, what have we done? We've seen also some issues with respect, and I've been very concerned about the temporary foreign worker program. So we've now moved forward with reforms to the temporary foreign worker program, again, to make sure Canadians are at the front of the line for jobs.
Okay, but
we've taken action on both cases.
But I haven't got an answer to the question. Did the minister investigate these specific cases?
With respect to the document, Evan, the minister took action before the document.
Okay, but obviously, if she took action before the document, it wasn't working because the document arrives and it says there's abuses. So I guess my question is, once she was aware of these specific abuses, Did she take action?
Evan, we've been very specific about the amount of time and effort the minister and the department have put into making sure the integrity of the EI system has been in place. She continues to do that. She'll continue to do it going forward. We're focused on making sure Canadians are linked to jobs, and the Canadian jobs are available to Canadians first, and then the temporary foreign worker program available to them if a firm still requires labor because of having an acute labor shortage in a local area.
Well, clearly, let me put this to Jenny Sims. These documents show that clearly abuses were taking place. I've just got a note here. Let me just read this to you, Jenny Sims, from the minister's, Alison Queen, the Director of Communications for the minister, saying this is more an EI angle. Canadians not being aware of applying for jobs. It's not really about abuse. What's your take on these documents and what they show?
Well, what these documents show is that the Conservative government have dismally failed Canadians in protecting jobs. And they have known about this. And as a matter of fact, even to take the cosmetic kind of actions, the public relations exercise we saw last week and the week before, was only as a result of the CBC focusing on the folks at RBC and the very obvious abuse of the program there. But there's much more evidence than this. When I travel to Edmonton, the BC Federation of Labour has released documents that the ministry is aware of. I know that. The Alberta Labour Federation has released exact figures and documents. But once again, what this government does is it fails to act even when they know that the system they have set up is broken. Last year, when they tried to fix the system, it actually widened the door and led to further abuse.
So you don't think, let me bring in Roger Cousin. I want to know your view here, listening to both other MPs. What do you make of this document that we've obtained that shows there was clear warnings in May of last year, and here's 3 cases that I've read out, of abuses taking place?
Well, we knew the problems existed, Evan, 3 years ago with the Auditor General's report and the recommendations that came from the Auditor General's report. We know that the government's contention at the time was that we are fixing things, we are moving to fix things. We know that when they put forward the accelerated labor market opinion, plus the 15% discount on temporary foreign workers, when they put those changes forward, the Minister Kenney said at the time that this was done as a result of deep consultation. And here's the problem. I sort of disagree with Jenny just a bit, because they're taking action, but the action they're taking is void of any consultation. They have this incestuous approach to consultation. Like for DFO, when they were going to do away with owner-operator and fleet separation, Evan, you know, all they spoke with was fish processors. Didn't speak with any fishermen or anybody in the industry. These changes that they brought in last year, they were forced to reverse and flip on them because they haven't consulted with people. And
but that may be. I mean, they say they've consulted. What's your take, though? I mean, is this about, in your view, and I want to get back to Kalish, but Roger Kushner, is this simply a case where, back in 2012, there wasn't enough information in the system? In other words, people that were looking for jobs didn't know where there were jobs, companies couldn't find them, the government's taken steps to fix that communication problem now, and so they've actually addressed this problem. What do you say to that?
That's just outrageous.
Evan, they've choked off the system. They took another $35 million out of the compliance, from compliance in this last budget. So there aren't enough bodies to follow. What's even happening with LMOs? They're issuing LMOs, and I'm sure the government can't tell you how many of those LMOs actually fill job applications. I'm sure that
these are labor market. Just so people understand, these are labor market opinions, and of course the accelerated labor market opinions.
Yes.
One program. Some have suggested there was abuse in it, and the government has actually suspended it. Kelly Leach, again, can you just help me understand, if you can, when we read this document, it's pretty clear that the system isn't working as it's supposed to be. How many warnings has the minister over time got about this, and were the changes initially designed to fix this, and did they just not work?
Well, Evan, there was concern with respect to linking the temporary foreign worker program with employment insurance prior to the 2012 budget. And that's why our announcement in that budget of better linking the programs, and then a series of initiatives following that. So whether that be job alerts that, you know, the young people in my riding are actually delighted that they're actually hearing about jobs so they can apply for them now.
But Kelly,
they're pleased that there are opportunities for them that are being highlighted. And then moving forward in 2013, our budget focused on making sure that individuals, young Canadians and older Canadians even, have access to a new Canada Jobs Grant, a way of actually getting the skills they need to be able to access a job.
But with all due respect,
today.
Kelly, there's a couple complaints here. One is that people on EI, so Canadians looking for jobs, aren't getting these jobs. Okay. The second thing is these are, what it says here to the minister, these are food counter attendants. These aren't high-skilled jobs, which was fundamentally the purpose of temporary foreign workers.
And you're right,
So,
Evan.
so is that abuse in the system?
Evan, we had a challenge, and that's why we moved forward with a number of changes to make sure that Canadians are better linked to jobs. So your point's well taken. A problem was identified, the problem was then addressed, and now we're moving on to making sure that we deal with the temporary.
But really, when you look at this, Evan, the ministry says they fixed the problem last year, but what they've done now is just unfixed the poor fix they made last year. The 15%, it doesn't exist in the House, then now we're getting rid of it. The ALMOs, which were obviously being massively abused, are suspended. But at the same time, when we look at the number of Canadians who are out of work, and this government, knowing that there have been abuses in the system, have sat on this information and not taken concrete action to address the abuses. Where is the oversight over the LMOs that are being presented?
But I mean, I think I have about 30 seconds, but Kelly, that's a fair question. This is a year ago.
So
the changes to accelerated labour market opinions, which was a big issue on food counter attendants, that took a year after this, just last week. That's the first question. And the second question, and I think it's a legitimate question to raise, is the time it took to make these changes, and in that time, the number of temporary foreign workers in Canada actually went up, not down.
Well, two items. Number one, the document that you're referring to, Evan, those items were then subsequently, after that, the issues addressed. We moved forward with job alerts. We've made sure that Canadians
After
knew
a
more
year.
Evan, if I could.
Well, let Kelly Leach, real quick to Kelly Leach, and then Roger Cuzner, very quickly.
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Yep.
So the issues outlined in the document, addressed, moved forward, action taken. So that issue had dealt with within 6 months, actually probably within 3 months following that. Let's be very clear. Problem identified, problem fixed, action taken. With respect to the accelerated LMOs, though, Evan, we have a huge labor shortage in Alberta, Saskatchewan, and numerous other places. We need Canadians to fill those roles, but when we don't have enough Canadians, we need both low and high skilled individuals to make sure that they are available to fill those roles so those firms can be productive.
Okay, well, that, I mean, guys, I got to leave. Roger Cuzner, I promised you the last word, and I should say most of the temporary foreign workers were in Toronto and Calgary, not necessarily. So there are lots of high employment issues there. Roger Cuzner, got 30 seconds.
1 in 7 jobs that this government has created have gone to temporary foreign workers. At the same time, there are additional 250,000 Canadians without work. Canadians don't trust them to run the program. They don't trust them to review the program, and they certainly don't trust them to fix it. This was a good program. This was a good program that they ran up on the rocks.
All right. We're going to talk more about these documents that we've obtained. Kelly Leach, Jenny Sims, Roger Cuzner, I appreciate your time today.
Thanks, Evan.